Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the hardest thing in life isn't believing in the promise. It's surviving the process. Because the promise looks good on paper, but the process feels heavy in reality. The promise gives you hope, but the process tests your faith. And I came to tell somebody today, don't quit in the middle, don't give up in the tension, don't walk away when it feels like nothing is working, because what you're going through is not the end, it's the evidence that God is preparing you for the promise. See, we all love the idea of victory, but we don't always love the path it takes to get there. We love the dream, but we don't always understand the delays. But hear me, if you'll hold on, if you'll trust Him in the waiting, if you'll keep walking even when it doesn't make sense, the process is going to lead you straight into the promise. And when you get there, you'll realize every tear, every struggle, every late night, every prayer, it was all part of shaping you into the person who could carry the blessing. When you look at your life and see the challenges, the waiting, the struggles that feel like they are crushing you, it is easy to assume that God has forgotten you or that life is punishing you for something. But what if the very things you see as punishment are really preparation? What if the process you are enduring right now is shaping you, molding you, and building you into the person who can hold the weight of the promise God has spoken over your life? We all want the promise, we all want the victory, the breakthrough, the success story, but promises are heavy. They require shoulders that are strong enough, faith that is deep enough, and character that is mature enough to carry them without collapsing. That's why the process is not punishment, it's preparation. Think about it like this: a seed never becomes a tree overnight. It has to be buried first, pressed down into dark soil, seemingly forgotten. To the outside eye, that looks like punishment. But inside that darkness, a transformation is happening. Roots are digging deep. Strength is being developed beneath the surface. And when the time is right, the seed breaks through the ground and reaches for the light. That's not punishment, that's preparation, and so it is with your life. When you feel buried under responsibilities, under heartbreak, under unanswered prayers, maybe it isn't that you are being buried, it's that you are being planted. The process prepares your patience. The process prepares your perseverance. The process teaches you to trust God even when you cannot trace Him. If you receive the promise too soon, you would not know how to sustain it. If you got what you prayed for before your character was ready, the blessing would crush you instead of lift you. That is why God allows seasons that stretch you, seasons that break you open, seasons that test your faith, because He knows that the weight of the promise requires preparation. And what looks like a closed door may actually be the very thing protecting you until you are ready to walk through it. We often complain about the waiting, but the waiting is working in ways we cannot see. Think about the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. They had a promise of a land flowing with milk and honey, but God didn't lead them on the shortest route. He led them the long way around, because the process was necessary to shape them into a people who could actually live in the land without falling apart. What looked like delay was divine preparation, and the same God who led them through the wilderness is leading you through your wilderness right now, not to punish you, but to prepare you. If you can shift your perspective, if you can see your process as preparation instead of punishment, everything changes. The trial becomes training, the obstacle becomes opportunity, the delay becomes development, and instead of resenting the process, you can embrace it, knowing that God wastes nothing. Every tear, every disappointment, every unanswered prayer, it's all being woven into a bigger picture, a greater plan, a promise worth waiting for. So the next time you feel like life is unfair, the next time you wonder why you are stuck where you are, remind yourself, this is not punishment. This is preparation. You are being shaped, stretched, and strengthened for something bigger than you can imagine. And when the promise finally comes, you will not only be able to hold it, you will understand why the process was necessary all along. When you find yourself in a season where things are moving slower than you expected, it's easy to assume that the delay is a denial. You prayed for something, you believed for it, and yet it hasn't come to pass. You look around and see other people stepping into their breakthroughs, their opportunities, their promises, and you wonder, what about me? Did God forget me? Did he change his mind? But the truth is, just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. A delay is not the same as a denial. Many times, what feels like God holding you back is actually God setting you up. Imagine a parent teaching their child to ride a bike. The child is eager to take off and pedal as fast as they can, but the parent knows that without balance, without learning how to stop and steer, the child could get hurt. So the parent holds the seat, slows the pace, and waits for the right moment to let go. To the child, it feels like a frustrating delay. But to the parent, it is love. The delay is a setup to ensure the child doesn't just start the ride, but can finish it safely. In the same way, the delays in your life are not to keep you from the promise, but to prepare you to handle it once it arrives. Sometimes we treat God like a vending machine. We put in a prayer and expect instant results. But God is not a vending machine. He is a wise Father who knows what we can handle and when we can handle it. If you received everything you prayed for right when you asked, you might destroy the blessing, or the blessing might destroy you. God knows the right time, the right place, the right opportunity, and sometimes the delay is His way of aligning everything perfectly for your good. That relationship you thought you lost, maybe it was a setup for a healthier one. That job you didn't get, maybe it was a setup for the one that would take you further than you imagined. That door that closed, maybe it was protecting you from walking into something that would have harmed you. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had dreams of greatness at a young age, but instead of stepping straight into the palace, he was thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, and imprisoned unjustly. To anyone else, it would have looked like God's promises had failed. But every delay in Joseph's life was setting him up for something bigger. The pit prepared him for perseverance, the prison prepared him for leadership, and when the time was right, he stepped into the palace not a second too soon, not a second too late. The delays were not denials, they were divine setups. Your delay may feel frustrating right now, but what if you could trust that God is orchestrating something greater behind the scenes? What if you could believe that every not yet is leading to a better yes than you ever imagined? The delay is not a rejection, it is redirection. It is God saying, I'm not finished arranging the details yet. Trust me, keep walking, keep believing. So don't despise the delay. Don't mistake silence for absence. Just because you can't see movement doesn't mean nothing is happening. A seed takes time to break through the soil. A caterpillar takes time in the cocoon before it can fly. And your promise takes time to manifest because the setup is still in motion. Hold on to your faith because the delay is only temporary. What looks like a setback may be the very thing positioning you for the breakthrough you've been waiting for. Growth is not something that happens when everything in life is easy and smooth. True growth is often birthed in the places where you feel stretched, uncomfortable, and uncertain. We all love the idea of winning, of standing on the mountaintop with the victory in our hands. But the truth is, it's not the winning that shapes you, it's the waiting. Waiting teaches you things that winning never could. Waiting develops patience, endurance, and resilience. Winning feels good for a moment, but waiting builds strength for a lifetime. When you are waiting, you are learning how to trust. You are learning how to keep going when you don't see results. You are learning that your value is not tied to immediate outcomes, but to the process of who you are becoming. Think about a muscle in the gym. Growth doesn't happen the moment you pick up the weight and flex. Growth happens when you strain under resistance, when the muscle fibers are torn and stretched, and then, in the quiet recovery, they rebuild stronger than before. Waiting is your spiritual resistance training. It may feel like nothing is happening, but every day you choose not to give up, you are growing stronger on the inside. It is easy to celebrate someone's success, but what you don't see is the waiting that shaped them, the hours of practice no one applauded, the nights of prayer no one heard, the tears shed in silence. Growth doesn't shout, it whispers. Growth happens in the hidden seasons where you are tempted to quit, but you hold on anyway. That is why the waiting is so important. It's in the waiting that roots grow deep enough to withstand the storms that come with winning. Look at nature for a moment. A tree with shallow roots might grow quickly, but the first strong wind can knock it down. A tree that spends years developing deep roots underground may look slow on the surface, but when the storms come, it stands tall. The waiting season is your rooting season. It's when your character is being formed so that when the promise arrives, you won't be shaken by pressure, criticism, or temptation. Winning without waiting can leave you unstable, but waiting before winning makes you unshakable. The Bible is filled with examples of people who grew in the waiting. David was anointed king as a boy, but he waited years before he wore the crown. In the meantime, he faced lions, bears, and giants that trained him for leadership. Each battle was part of his growth in the waiting. If he had stepped into the throne without that process, he would not have had the strength to handle it. The waiting was not wasted, it was working, and so it is with you. The waiting may feel like wasted time, but it is the womb of growth. It's where God is teaching you dependence, stretching your faith, building your endurance. You may not see immediate results, but every day you stay faithful, every day you keep showing up, every day you choose hope over despair, you are growing into the person who can handle the victory that is coming. So don't resent the waiting. Don't despise the silence. Don't curse the delays. Recognize them as the soil where your roots are being formed. Growth doesn't happen after the promise. It happens before. And when the winning finally comes, you will carry it with strength, humility, and maturity, because you are willing to grow in the waiting. When God gives you a promise, He is not only interested in what He is bringing to you, but in who you are becoming along the way. The blessing is not just about the destination, it is about the transformation that happens in the journey. That is why before God delivers the promise, He develops your character. If your character cannot sustain the weight of the promise, the very thing you prayed for can become the thing that destroys you. A blessing in the wrong hands becomes a burden, but when your character is strong, the blessing will not only stay, it will multiply. Think about it. A person can win the lottery overnight and suddenly have millions of dollars, but if they do not have the character of discipline, wisdom, and stewardship, that money can disappear just as quickly as it came. On the other hand, someone who has been trained through years of sacrifice and hard work knows how to handle increase when it comes because their character has been developed in the process. God works the same way. He does not just want to hand you the promise. He wants to shape you into the kind of person who can live in it, thrive in it, and use it to bless others. Character is not built in moments of ease. It is forged in moments of testing. Patience is not learned when everything is delivered instantly. It is learned in seasons of waiting. Integrity is not proven when life is convenient. It is proven when you have the opportunity to cut corners but choose not to. Faith is not strengthened when everything makes sense. It grows when you decide to trust even when you cannot see the outcome. Every trial, every delay, every challenge is a classroom where your character is being taught and trained. Look at Moses. He had the promise of leading the Israelites out of Egypt, but before he could step into that calling, he spent 40 years in the wilderness. To some, that looked like wasted time, but in reality, it was training time. In the wilderness, Moses learned humility, patience, and dependence on God, qualities he would need to lead a stubborn and fearful nation. The promise was real, but the character development was necessary before the promise could be fulfilled. Or think about Jesus himself. Before stepping into public ministry, he was led into the wilderness to fast for 40 days and be tempted by the enemy. Why? Because even the Son of God demonstrated that before the power of the promise is revealed, character must be tested. His identity was challenged, his hunger was tested, his loyalty to God was confronted. Yet in that testing, his character stood firm, and he emerged ready to carry out the promise of his calling. That same principle applies to you. The closed doors you are facing may not be rejection, they may be opportunities for your character to grow. The setbacks you encounter may not be punishment, they may be God's way of strengthening you in areas you didn't even know were weak. Because when you finally step into the promise, there will be pressure, there will be opposition, there will be responsibility. And if your character is not strong enough, the weight of the blessing can crush you. But if you allow God to develop you in the process, you will not just reach the promise, you will remain in it. So instead of despising the testing, embrace it. Instead of asking, why me, begin to ask, what is God teaching me through this? Understand that every disappointment, every delay, every difficult season is shaping your character into something unshakable. And when the promise comes, you will not just celebrate the outcome, you will be grateful for the process that made you ready to carry it. What we often see as a setback is, more times than not, a setup for something greater. Life has a way of throwing obstacles in our path that feel like they are blocking us from moving forward. The job you didn't get, the relationship that ended, the opportunity that slipped through your hands. All of these moments feel like walls that stop you cold. But if you look closer, if you trust deeper, you may find that those very setbacks were not barriers meant to break you, but bridges meant to guide you toward the place you were always meant to be. What you call a setback, God often calls a strategy. Think about the times you have prayed for something and it didn't happen. In the moment, it felt like a closed door, a lost chance, a painful disappointment. But later on, when you looked back, you realized that if you had gotten what you wanted, it would have pulled you in the wrong direction. Sometimes God closes doors not because He is rejecting you, but because He is redirecting you. That closed door was a setup for the open door that you could not yet see. That breakup that broke your heart may have been the very thing that kept you available for the person who would truly value and love you. That failed plan may have been the seedbed for a new vision that would take you further than you dreamed. Joseph's life is a powerful example of this. Betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison, every one of those moments looked like a setback. But each of those so-called setbacks was positioning him for the palace. If his brothers had not betrayed him, he would never have ended up in Egypt. If he had not been imprisoned, he would never have met the cupbearer who connected him to Pharaoh. And if he had not gone through those trials, He would not have had the wisdom and humility needed to manage a nation through famine. What looked like a setback was actually a setup for his destiny. This principle plays out in our lives more often than we realize. The very things that hurt us, confuse us, and frustrate us are often the same things that lead us to discover strength, resilience, and opportunities we never would have found otherwise. Setbacks force us to grow, to adapt, to rely on God in ways we wouldn't if everything always went smoothly. They strip away our illusion of control and remind us that God is writing a bigger story than the one we see on the surface. It is easy to feel defeated in the face of setbacks. The natural response is to question, to complain, or to give up. But if you shift your perspective, you can begin to see setbacks as stepping stones. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "How might this be setting me up for what's next?" The perspective you choose will determine whether you stay stuck in disappointment or move forward with hope. The truth is, every setback is a crossroads. You can either let it define you or refine you. You can let it break your faith or build your faith. And if you trust that God is sovereign, that He is working all things together for your good, then you can walk through setbacks with confidence that they are secretly setups. The pain has a purpose, the detour has direction, the delay has design, so the next time you face a setback, don't lose heart. Don't assume the story is over. The pit did not stop Joseph, the prison did not define him, and the betrayal did not cancel his promise. In the same way, your setback is not the end of your story. It is part of the setup for something bigger, better, and greater than you can imagine. The promise always sounds exciting, doesn't it? When you first hear it, when you first dream it, when you first catch a glimpse of what God wants to do in your life, your heart comes alive. You begin to imagine what it will look like, how it will feel, what life will be like when you finally hold it in your hands. But then comes the process, the waiting, the testing, the delays, the disappointments, the lessons you didn't ask for but cannot avoid. And it's in that tension that so many people give up. They let go too soon because the process feels too hard, forgetting that the promise is always worth the process. What we often don't realize is that every great promise comes with a price. Every breakthrough comes with a battle. Every testimony comes from a test. If you want the crown, you must carry the cross. If you want the harvest, you must endure the planting, the watering, and the weeding. The promise is glorious, but the process is gritty. And if you quit in the middle, you never see the fullness of what was waiting for you on the other side. Think about a woman in labor. She carries the promise of new life inside her, but before she can hold that child in her arms, she must go through the process of pain. The contractions intensify, the waiting feels unbearable, but the moment the child is born, the mother realizes it was all worth it. The pain did not compare to the joy of the promise. In the same way, the process you are walking through now may feel painful, heavy, and overwhelming. But one day you will look back and see that it was all worth it because the promise will outweigh the pain. David knew what it meant to endure a process for the sake of a promise. He was anointed king as a young shepherd boy, but he didn't step into the throne the next day. He spent years running from Saul, hiding in caves and facing battles that threatened his life. At times, it must have felt easier to give up, to question if the promise was even real. But David held on, and when the day finally came for him to be crowned king, he could look back and understand that the caves had taught him courage, the waiting had taught him patience, and the battles had taught him to lean on God. The process was painful, but the promise was worth it. The same is true for you. Whatever you are walking through right now, whatever struggles are testing your endurance, they are not meant to destroy you. They are meant to develop you. The process is not proof that the promise has failed. It is proof that the promise is being prepared. Every tear, every trial, every lonely night, every unanswered prayer. It is all part of the process that makes the promise even more valuable when it arrives. So don't give up too soon. Don't trade your future for temporary relief. Don't let today's pain blind you to tomorrow's promise. The enemy would love for you to quit before you see the breakthrough. But if you can hold on, if you can keep walking, if you can trust that God is faithful even when life doesn't make sense, you will see the promise fulfilled. And when you do, you will know deep in your soul that every step of the process was worth it. One day, you will thank God not only for the promise, but also for the process that led you there. Because without the process, you wouldn't be strong enough to carry the promise. And when you finally hold it in your hands, you'll understand. The promise was always worth the process.